So, Ryan, Will and I were talking before you joined us that I think you may be, just to bury the lead here, you may be the only one out of the three of us who likes this movie.
God.
Are you not the only one anymore? Now it's like even I don't want to talk about this movie anymore.
I appreciate it for what it is. I don't think it's, I don't even think it's in the top half of Scorsese stuff. I just think primarily that it's a fun world to get lost in.
If only that's what had happened.
I was about to say, Well,
you say it's fun for what it is. I don't want to put you on the spot, but what would you say it is? Because I've got a pretty good idea that I'll say that I think it is. But I hadn't seen it since it came out in theaters, and I'll tell that story as we get going. And I was surprised because I went into it wanting to be just blown away.
Why? I think the performance of Daniel Day-Lewis kind of gets out in front of the movie itself, maybe more so than the movie even deserves. And what is that movie? Well, on this episode of the Culture Cast, I'm still your host, Chris Stashew. I'm joined by my two good friends all the way from just a couple hours down the road, Disconnected's own Ryan Verrill.
Hey.
He's moist, folks. It's hot. It's a hot summer. It's hot girl summer out here in the Midwest.
It is a temperate one.
Yeah. And also joining us all the way from the best coast, your friend and mine, Dr. Will Dodson.
My air conditioning's working great.
Congratulations. And if it stops working tomorrow, that's your fault now. You've brought it upon yourself.
Nah, bro, I'm in a rental. They have to fix that shit.
Oh, okay, fair. Hey, see, you're out in front of everybody. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we are still talking about epic movies, and we're going to be talking about Martin Scorsese's 2002 epic, Gangs of New York.
In a city ruled by fear, a stranger to the streets.
His name's Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. I'm New York.
Is up against the man who owns them.
Everybody owes, everybody pays. Challenge.
Winner of 2 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Director Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz. Gangs of New York.
So the film is directed by Martin Scorsese, based on a screenplay by Jay Cox, Steve Zillian, and Kenneth Lonergan. It's based on the book The Gangs of New York by Herbert Asbury from 1927, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz, Jim Broadbent, John C. Reilly. Henry Thomas is in there for like a cup of coffee. Brendan Gleeson is there as well. And the movie is all about Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who is affectionately named Amsterdam. Okay. And his father, who's played by Liam Neeson, gets murdered by William Bill the Butcher Cutting, who's played by Daniel Day-Lewis, and probably the film's only real great performance. And so he then must take revenge in a very generic, typical revenge story that is not at all what I was expecting this movie to be, because I'd never seen it. But I'm going to kick it to you first, Dr. Dodson. What did you think of Gangs of New York?
Well, it comes at an interesting time for Scorsese because he had just kind of gone into that post-casino multiple flops in a row, financial flops in a row with Kundun and Bringing Out the Dead. And this was kind of a comeback film. First film he did with Leonardo DiCaprio. Now I think he's done 6 with DiCaprio.
Cool.
Inexplicably. Yeah, the DiCaprio period is not my favorite period.
Boy, it's so not my favorite period. I wish he had literally gravitated towards any other actor at all.
We'll definitely get into DiCaprio's performance as we go through. So, I saw this in the theater when it came out in 2002 in a really strange headspace. I was in Akron, Pennsylvania, at a missionary training camp, surrounded by
They have to teach you how to do missionary position? That was like the perfect Beavis and Butthead adjacent laugh, by the way.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I'm not sure too many people at this camp could have taught you how to do that.
Yeah, well, I kind of figured as much.
They could teach you how to convert so you can have some water to drink. Anyway, so I felt very out of place, and so going to see this story of immigrants was kind of interesting for me. I really responded well to the historical period, which I'm sure we'll get into, right? You've got these nativist gangs who are prejudiced, to put it nicely, right, against these incoming, predominantly Irish, and importantly that they're Catholic, right? That's a big part of the animus against them. So that part, right, the historical backdrop, that part is really interesting, and it is an epic, right? The opening sequence, the prologue, is huge. The sets are set pieces are unbelievable. If there is any CGI, it's not noticeable. I mentioned that because the follow up to this was The Aviator, which I'm glad we didn't watch.
Wait, you're talking about Scorsese movies with Leonardo DiCaprio in them that are even worse than this one? No way.
I don't even want to use, like, for me personally, I don't want to say like worse, better, those kinds of things, because I recognize that he's experimenting with some new techniques, some new kind of approaches to story. But, well, when we get into the relationship between Bill the Butcher, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Amsterdam, the Leonardo DiCaprio character, I'd like to compare it to another Scorsese film, but I'll hold off. I've rambled on a little bit. I basically talked about what I like about the film, and that is everything that's on the edges looks great.
All right, Ryan, what about you?
All right. So, a lot of the same stuff as Will. I am a big fan of very obviously practical set pieces. So this movie speaks a lot to that easily. So watching, a heavy amount of modern films recently made me appreciate the sets in this quite a bit more than I probably would have even a decade ago. But the other big thing, I forgot how funny this is. There's a lot of scenes in this that are just unnecessarily funny. Like as they're going through the attempted assassination scene at the play, and Abraham Lincoln is just stuck up on his perch while everything's happening, flapping like a duck. It's a pretty damn comical way to end that scene when all that drama just went down. There's a lot of understated setting up and kind of just silly situations, but really, I mean, for me, this all comes down to Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, I just plain miss him as an actor. And watching this again just rekindled a lot of that. Every single time he was on screen, every scene is just interesting because he is in it inherently. The big one that I loved is them rolling up on the apartment building burning, and him just taking control of the situation and not doing it in a good way, but just being the absolute most vile person that he could be right then. And he's great in this, obviously. I still can't believe this thing was nominated for 10 Oscars. Crazy.
And won none of them.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be the joke, but...
I don't know if is it a joke? Like, I mean, it's just fucking... I mean, that's Scorsese for you, right? Like, not someone who was necessarily treated by the Academy.
Right.
I mean, look, if this movie didn't win anything, then did Goodfellas deserve to win anything? No. I mean, that's the reality. Like, he's not going to win for Goodfellas. He sure as hell shouldn't win for this movie. I had never seen this before. This is one of those blind spot movies that just kind of, I don't know. Let me put it this way. It has two of my least favorite actors in it. Leonardo DiCaprio and the acting powerhouse that is Cameron Diaz. Man, something about Cameron Diaz and the energy that she brings to things. I have a hard time taking her seriously, like in a serious movie. She's a lot better when there's less being expected of her, because I think she's actually funny than the things that I've seen her in that I think she's good in. I don't think her doing an Irish accent, a very poor one, on top of everything else, I don't think she is well cast in this movie. I think she's terribly miscast. I mean, if you're going to have a redheaded actress doing an Irish accent, just cast Julianne Moore. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the answer is here, but there are actors in this movie that I don't resonate with. She is one of them. Leonardo DiCaprio is another. He is someone who, if you have listened to this show any amount of time, you will know that he is not a favorite actor of mine. Frankly, he is someone who I don't get it. He kind of is always doing the same thing. He's like actor guy. Actor with a capital A, which is fine. I don't think that has caused him to make interesting choices. I think for the most part, the choices DiCaprio has made for quite some time have been very much samey or of a piece. And this is kind of in that same wheelhouse of like, this is a very serious movie. And it's like, okay, I guess, I don't know. I prefer Scorsese when it's not, I'm not going to say when it's not this, but this is not in my top anything of Scorsese. And there's a lot of movies that he's done that are amazing. This wouldn't be one of them. Again, like, it's a well-made movie. I think technically it's an impressive film. Obviously, I can't really argue that. But in terms of it being like an interesting story, I think I've seen this story told a million different times, a million different ways in American cinema, in Indian cinema. This is very popular revenge stories. It's just a revenge story. I mean, there's nothing, I'm not saying it's not creative, but the creativity of the idea comes from when it's set, not what it's doing. It is very much a story you have seen before. In a lot of ways, it almost feels like a Disney movie in terms of the way it's like set up and the payoff and the setting. It's very like, no, I wouldn't say like fantastical, but it feels very romantic. I mean, the way the film ends with, oh, and the skyline of New York is built out over the cemetery. It's like, jerk yourself off somewhere else, please. Because again, like, for me, the movie never hits those notes that it's trying to earn in those last 5 minutes of the movie. But it is very clear to me once we get to the end of the movie and what it wants from us as the audience to kind of internalize is like, I don't fucking care, because this story doesn't ever get there. This is a romanticized revenge story in a setting that should have been used for something else, because how interesting the setting is never lived up to by the premise. The premise just never lives up to the interesting setting. And again, the best thing about the movie is Daniel Day-Lewis, to the point where it's almost a shame that he's not just the goddamn main character of the movie, and it's just a movie about his character doing his things. Because he's such an interesting character, the camera just kind of tends to focus on him, even when it's supposed to be a Leonardo DiCaprio movie, or at least they're supposed to be sharing the screen. And it's like, you know what? Sorry, but when Daniel Day-Lewis and Leonardo DiCaprio are opposite one another, I know who the good actor is. It definitely highlights the failings of someone else when you are opposite one of the greatest actors of all time, definitely of his generation of people. And like you alluded to, Ryan, he's not even acting anymore, and he's still well alive, well healthy. Like, you know what I mean? Or is Daniel Day-Lewis dead? And I just didn't. No. Okay,
he's healthy. He's alive.
Okay, he's just retired, right?
At the moment, yeah. We'll see what happens in the future.
Fair. He's been retired for almost 7 years now. It's been a while. He hasn't pulled a Soderbergh and like made 5 movies since.
He's cobbling, right? Is that what he does? He's a cobbler.
Is that what it is? Is he like a shoe man now? I'm a shoe man.
You went over a lot of things. I want to go back and pick up some of those threads. First of all, Cameron Diaz's character, I don't know that any actress could have done much with that role. Scorsese's been criticized at times for having pretty marginal women characters. He's also had great women characters.
I was about to say, Casino and Goodfellas are good examples of non-marginalized female characters.
Well, and Alice doesn't live here anymore, but After Hours. But this character might be the most flimsily written character, certainly the most flimsily written one in this movie. It was a thankless role. I mean, she's an incredible pickpocket. She's flirty. She turns out she has a depth of character, and she's had long-standing intimate relationships with lots of the guys. Everybody gets jealous, and inexplicably, she decides to devote herself to being at Leo's side and nursing him into health and validating him. When he's done nothing to earn that except for treat her like garbage.
Oh wait, you don't like
both
when
have scars, Will?
Yeah, but he gets angry when she had sex with other people before he showed up. How dare she be a human being that exists in the world? It's a good way to endear us to our lead character by making him a fucking asshole. Like, cool.
Well, that just makes him a typical dude. But
yeah, even then.
But we'll come back to her in a minute. But moving to Leo. Who his costume and hairdo make him look like that guy in college who walks around with like Robert Frost conspicuously displayed in his backpack, but he hasn't actually read any of it, or like Walden or something. He's like, oh yeah, he'd be friends with that guy from Into the Wild. You know what I mean?
Would he have a hacky sack on him at all times?
Oh, totally. Like this. Like
you guys sack, bro, or what?
I get not to sound so all aggro or anything, but I do tend to tense up when pretty boys are in tough roles, like tough guy roles. I never buy it. And Leonardo DiCaprio in like a murderous tough guy role like this is just the most laughable thing. Yeah, like this is the guy who's going to take down Billy the Butcher. Okay.
Hey, he did 16 years in prison. You don't believe that?
He wasn't in prison. He was in an orphanage.
He was in an orphanage. And you know what? Best I can tell, based on things I've seen with Will earlier this year, children in orphanages at this time, if they're white kids, not terribly treated poorly. They kind of get what they want all the time.
Oh, right. I forgot about Oliver.
Yeah. How could you forget about Oliver? You were the one who liked it.
I like Oliver.
I think it's funny, though, to your point, because if you go and look at DiCaprio's body of work, this kind of character is not played by him often, if ever. And I don't know what Leonardo DiCaprio brings to roles for people specifically, because I am only one person and I know the way I receive him. But do people believe him as, like, would this have been believable in 2002? Like, oh, I don't see it even then. Like, it seems so forced. He seems forced, and he doesn't seem like a presence that has any ability to stand toe-to-toe with Daniel Day-Lewis, who drinks his milkshake in every fucking scene that they're in, to reference a much better movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, frankly.
Obviously, for monetary reasons, the marketing, they never could have done this, but I would have believed Henry Thomas in that role a lot more as Amsterdam. Like he looked like he had been dragged through the wharf his whole life, and he showed, even though it was a stupid jealousy thing, but he showed real pain,
right?
In his character, which was also a one-dimensional character.
I know he wasn't super established yet, but could you imagine Colin Farrell in this? That's all I kept thinking last night. I feel like he would have been great.
An actual Irish actor? Shocking. Not the well, that's the thing. DiCaprio's not doing an Irish thing, right? Thankfully, because he's raised in the United States. So at least he's not doing the Irish patois that Cameron Diaz is like fumbling through. But Colin Farrell would have been so good in this. Like it would. It's like, can you imagine if Scorsese and Colin Farrell had linked up as director and actor and like worked together on like 7 or 8 things as opposed to DiCaprio?
As long as Colin Farrell still gets to go with Martin McDonagh, I'm fine with that.
Right. To be fair, I as good as Martin Scorsese is, and as much as I like him, I don't think Scorsese, as much as I like Goodfellas, I will never go out on a limb and say Scorsese's written anything nearly as good as the 2 things that Martin McDonagh has written that I really resonate with. But Colin Farrell would have been a much better choice just based on the ethnic makeup of the actor needing to be a little bit more, you're Irish but play American, not you're American play sort of not Irish. Don't do the accent.
Will
seriously.
Clearly disagrees.
I mean, I don't know. It's always a fun thought exercise to think about recasting roles and everything. I don't know.
I think it's a good choice just because of how specific this kind of role was for what they needed. Like you make a good point, Ryan. Like this specifically would have been a good thing for Colin Farrell. Because at the time he's doing like Phone Booth, which I love, and Minority Report and Heart's War. So working with Scorsese in 2002 would have been a pretty big boon for his career. Like 2002 Colin Farrell is, yeah. I actually, you're totally right. But then the question is like, I don't know, maybe Daniel Day-Lewis would have been even better then because he would have had to play off an actor who is bringing a little bit more to the role than just, like you said, Will, pretty boy energy.
Well, I'll tell you though, if you told me that we could have Colin Farrell in Gangs of New York, but we'd lose Phone Booth, I'd say, nope, keep it as it is. I want Phone Booth.
I love Phone Booth. That is unabashed love for that film. I absolutely have nothing bad to say about that movie. It's such a it's a masterpiece of drama. So Hitchcock couldn't have done it better.
Here's a question for you all, because I think the central thing that disappointed me was I felt that the A story did not live up to the B story and took away from the B story. Like, to me, the most interesting stuff is the history around Jim Broadbent as Boss Tweed and the way New York is developing and changing, and the way things are changing despite, like, Bill Butcher's on the way out the whole time. And he knows it, right? So that's a really interesting motivation for Butcher, who had no son of his own, to look for a kid to adopt, right? Like, fine, I'm totally into that premise. And Butcher is very charming. He's obviously very nuanced and complex. We see that that Amsterdam recognizes that the murder of his father by Butcher wasn't as simple as all that. And yet it ends up becoming, I'm going to steal your girl and I'm going to kill you because you killed my dad. The end. And Scorsese did this exact same story so much better in 1986 with The Color of Money, because you've got Paul Newman as Fast Eddie, who is looking for this surrogate son that he never had to complete this hole that's in his life. And he gets this brash and talented son who ends up betraying him, right? It's the exact same story. But Color of Money is much more satisfying to me dramatically, because there's some actual complexity to the relationship. And here it's set up to have that kind of complexity and nuance, which an epic movie like this deserves. But it turns into cookie cutter.
Well, and you mentioned
2 hours and 46 minutes.
Well, and you mentioned it as well, Will. The everything going on in the periphery of the story with the actual gangs of New York and the history of the time and Tammany Hall and everything, like, so, because there aren't a lot of movies about this time and place.
Right.
Like, it's kind of just this movie, really, which is kind of a shame, because it took Scorsese 20 years to make this movie. And he literally started working on this movie before Goodfellas, before Casino. And then once this movie ends up coming out, I wonder, like, I know that clearly Scorsese was so motivated by the setting and by the story in the book, and that in the world of these, like, nativist gangs in New York City fighting each other. But to then take that story and compartmentalize it away and then bring in other things that have nothing to do with it and make it this, like, generico kind of revenge story, feels like they're missing so many opportunities to actually play with the environment that they're in, as opposed to just going, his dad died and he's an orphan and now he's gonna get revenge. And they don't even mind the relationship between the two of them even much to begin with. Like, between Leonardo DiCaprio and Daniel Day-Lewis, they don't mind it as much as you would think they would be, given what you alluded to, where they're trying to theoretically go with the story, which is a guy worried that he has no legacy to speak of because, unlike the guy he murdered, he doesn't have a son. Because that's the other thing. That's like one moment in this entire movie. They're like, well, he had a son and what a shame it was. And it's like, that's it? That's all we're going to get at? Really? Okay, moving on, I guess. Like, they don't give themselves any moment of time in this movie to actually, like, sit and discuss things. It's just kind of, it just keeps going, but to what end?
See, I was thinking about this last night, because they revealed to Daniel Day-Lewis that Leonardo was who his character was at, like, the hour 30 mark or something like that.
Yeah.
There was still, like, an hour and 15 minutes left of the film at that point. I almost wonder if they never told the audience that he was the child from that opening scene, literally until like 20 minutes before the ending, if it would have created a more, we're not thinking about that sort of dynamic through this whole thing, and that doesn't become the A story. The A story is literally the day-to-day and this person rising up in the ranks of the gang, and then suddenly this person betrays, and then you display the flashbacks, so then all of that sort of hits you all at once.
Can I actually... To build on what you were talking about, Dr. Dodson, he does this story better in 4 years with The Departed. It's the same goddamn fucking story. It's the same fucking story. And look, I'm not as big of a fan of that movie as I used to be either. But if we're talking about an interaction between an older gangster and a younger gangster, at least it's mined more interestingly. Are you shaking your head because you don't like The Departed?
No, I know you're right, but you just triggered me.
Shit.
As Ryan knows well, when I saw The Departed in theaters in 2006, I left so disgusted that I swore never to watch another Scorsese movie. And to this day, I have not seen a single Scorsese movie made after The Departed.
Are you fucking serious?
Yes.
Wow. Wait, why?
I've kept my vow for 18 years.
Wait, why?
Because The Departed sucks, dude.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I don't know if it sucks, but it's definitely a poor facsimile compared to the movie that it is based off of.
Yeah, I remember being in the theater and being like, this sucks. And looking around at all the people who seem to be enjoying themselves and I'm like, no, I'm not wrong. This sucks. This is you're not gonna trick me into thinking that I'm making a mistake. This movie sucks. And then when he won the Oscar for it, I was like, oh, and the Oscars are a sham.
Well, you should have known that when they didn't give the Oscar to Goodfellas. They gave it to fucking Dances with Wolves.
No, I mean, yeah, I knew it. But, in 1990, I was 12. So I didn't care,
All it did was confirm to me that was their make good for Scorsese, right? Like, that was the make good Academy Award. Like, okay, you've been nominated enough times. The Departed.
Kind of like Return of the King for Peter Jackson. It's like, yeah, this is the worst movie you ever made, but we didn't give you enough Oscars, so. So no, your point is well taken. It's just I had a moment of personal trauma erupt when you said.
I mean, it is a very similar story to The Departed, and it has fucking Leonardo DiCaprio in it, and it has an aged legacy actor in the other role, like,
and a more interesting side character, right? The Marky Mark guy is more interesting.
And it has. I mean,
Thomas is more interesting here.
Well, I would actually say the Matt Damon character is the Henry Thomas character, and he's a much more interesting character even than most of the characters in this movie, because again, interesting in terms of what Damon is bringing to the role. Ultimately, does it go anywhere? Well,
Will, now you got to explain your Scorsese journey that you've been taking.
Yes, that was the vow of a much younger man, right? It was 2006. I was 28 years old. So earlier this year, I decided to take a personal journey through Scorsese films. I don't have a copy of Who's Knocking at My Door, but I have everything else. So I'm going. I actually resented having to skip ahead to Gangs of New York because I'm at Last Temptation of Christ. I started with Boxcar Bertha. Oh no, actually I'm at the Amazing Stories episode, and then Last Temptation.
Oh, I'm a completionist here. Sophisticate, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I will. Not only am I going to have to watch The Departed again.
Oh, are you? I was going to ask, are you going past The Departed?
Yeah. I'm going to watch everything. I'm even going to watch that gay monk movie he made.
Hey, you're getting that confused with Tropic Thunder's fake movie, okay? It's not a gay monk movie, as much as I wish it was.
I know it's not, but when it came out, I was like,
Alley.
When it came out, I was seriously like, wait, did Scorsese just make Satan's Alley? I know it's not, but the trailers made it look like it was.
It just needed that Gregorian chants from the 90s. That's all it needed in the background.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I mean, good for you. I don't know if you're going to enjoy his most recent stuff as much as some people have. I am not one of those people. I have very differing opinions upon pretty much everything he's done since The Departed.
I'm most excited to get to the end and watch the Rolling Thunder review.
You're not excited to watch Killers of the Flower Moon? The Irishman. Yeah, another great one.
Then there's the Silent.
The gay monk movie.
And The Wolf of Wall Street. Everybody tells me to be excited about that.
Yeah, sure. Be excited for it.
Because you love Leo DiCaprio.
Oh, God. I haven't seen Shutter Island, but I figured out the plot twist instantly. So,
yeah, that's a great one. Talk about a movie that I saw in that. You want to talk about a movie where I had the reaction that you had to The Departed to Shutter Island? I saw that in college in the movie theater with my friends. And I was like yourself, I was like, oh, I know what the twist is. Like, the twist is so fucking obvious. And there was that thing where I was like looking around in the theater at the people and they were like, it's like, really? And the saddest thing is that's the closest Scorsese has ever come to a proper horror movie. And it's not great. I actually wonder, with what you've seen of Scorsese so far, does it all hang together?
Well, I've seen everything up to and including The Departed.
So I know, but I'm asking you now, as having rewatched it, do the things hang together?
Yeah, I really King of Comedy is probably, along with Taxi Driver, my favorite of the early stuff. I don't like After Hours. I tried it again, didn't like it.
For shame. Shame on you.
I love Mean Streets. I like Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I hope it gets a nice restoration one of these days. That's one of his, I think it's his only film that is only available on DVD except for his two documentaries, both of which I like, My Voyage to Italy and A Personal Journey with Martin Scorsese Through American Cinema. I love those.
We should approach Scorsese to do Martin Scorsese on superhero films.
Well, I agree with him. 100%.
I really think that it should all just be burned in a garbage can. All right, Marty, fine. Sure.
He's right.
And yet he made Gangs of New York, so...
That's true. I mean, Gangs of New York might as well have been a superhero movie with the level of characterizations. No, that's a good point.
It kind of is my point. Like, it's... Gangs of New York, for me, like... I think the thing I was most surprised by sitting down to watch it was how underwhelmed I was, because I had heard so much about this movie for so long, about how amazing Day-Lewis was, about how good of a movie it is. I mean, it made more than one person's list of like top 10 movies of the year, including Peter Travers. It was Peter Travers' #1 film of the year for Rolling Stones. This was his favorite movie.
Oh, Peter Travers is a well-known shill for the industry. I mean, that guy never met a movie he didn't like unless he was paid not to. That guy is the most corrupt example of industry film criticism in the history of the medium. Is he alive?
Travers? Yeah, I think Peter Travers is still alive.
Well, Peter Travers, if you're watching this, fuck you. You suck. Nothing you have done is worth anything. You are fake. Tell Peter Travers his kids are ashamed of him.
You know, the opinions contained within do not necessarily represent Weirding Way Media as a corporation. However, they may represent someone's favorite productions. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. This man is out on his own here.
You guys scared of the Rolling Stone brand coming at you? Like, don't want to piss off Jan.
Oh, hold on. I just got this cease and desist. Let me read
Yeah,
this.
right. They heard us while we were recording. I was actually surprised to read. I mean, look, feelings on the person writing it aside, like it's surprising to me to learn that this was anybody's favorite movie of the year. Because I don't know. I was thoroughly underwhelmed, like thoroughly.
In all honesty, like no hyperbole. Peter Travers is paid for his top 10 list. Okay. Like, I'm not surprised that Gangs of New York was on it because it got very mixed reviews when it came out.
Sure did. It did. Well, and it got mixed reviews because, again, it feels like there's so much going on in the movie that doesn't necessarily gel together. Like, the character that Cameron Diaz is playing feels like it's in a different movie, doesn't need to be in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio's character kind of doesn't feel like he's in the same movie as anybody else. And then when you get to Daniel Day-Lewis, it's like, all right, I understand what movie we're in when we're with Daniel Day-Lewis's character. I guess I just don't understand why wasn't Daniel Day-Lewis's character just the main character of the movie?
I don't know. That would have made it. I think it's bad.
Are they afraid to let him lead a goddamn movie? Like, we know Day-Lewis can lead movies. It's not like he can't.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, and he really does lead this one. But I think more important or more valuable as a rewatch, the movie being as it is its resonance today, right? Like the Butcher's Gang, those are the white nationalists. Those are the Proud Boys. Those are the MAGA hats, you know, the kind of guys who say, my dad fought in the war, right? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Right. Oh, yeah, totally.
We were born here complaining about jobs being taken away while at the same time participating in the machinery of exploitation, spreading the racism and xenophobia, right? That part of the movie is really valuable. Watching it in 2024, having not seen it since 2002, I was surprised how current it felt. And I think that's what kept me watching all the way through. And actually, that's probably what made me so disappointed with how it ended up in the last 50 minutes or so, because all that falls away. The the politics and the evolving New York City, right? As you said, it didn't earn its end scene with the skyline developing through history, but it so easily could have, except it had to waste its time. Again, Cameron Diaz is not my favorite actress, but again, I don't I don't think anybody could have saved this role. If you took her role out of the movie entirely, would anything have changed? Only the subplot of Amsterdam being jealous that she had slept with Bill the Butcher. Okay. Well, he already hates Bill the Butcher because Bill the Butcher killed his dad. You don't need to add sexual jealousy on top of it, except to maybe give it a little incestual vibe because of the father-son dynamic that's developing. But that role is such a distraction from the propulsive narrative of the economic and political development of New York. That part is so cool and so interesting, and it's just so frustrating when the movie moves away from it.
Well, and I think the reality of this film is, if this film were to be made in 2024, it would be leaning on everything you just said a lot more than it would be leaning on kind of the revenge story. If it even had that story in it, in so many ways, this movie feels like a concept and an idea that is not contemporary. I mean, they were doing epics, but epics weren't a thing that were being done as frequently in the 90s and 2000s. But now I would say, like, we're getting pretty big epic movies frequently now, every year, at least one or two. And so if this movie had come out now, the Cameron Diaz and Leonardo DiCaprio thing might have been in the movie, but I think it would be a smaller part of the movie, because I think the focus of the movie would be the Daniel Day-Lewis, Bill the Butcher. I mean, if you remade this movie, you would have Bill the Butcher be the main character. If not, just have it being a story about him completely with no romantic underpinnings, or, again, because the movie sets up that there's this massive conflict, and we're going to have this character who's going to have to come back and right this massive wrong. And by the time we get to that at the end, it's like, I kind of wish he would just get murdered by Daniel Day-Lewis and come up short, because I don't really care about the narrative journey that he's been going on, because it's just very generic and basic and by the book and very rote, in a way that I'm surprised it's a Scorsese thing. It's this rote. Scorsese's not necessarily known for being a rote director.
You know, that would have been cool if Butcher had killed Amsterdam, because it would have made a dramatic and thematic inversion of the assassination of Lincoln, which was just about to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. Oh yeah. I'm thinking about that story in my head, and I'm like, wow, that would have been cool.
And that's honestly, because again, I had never seen the film before. When the film had a happy ending, I was shocked, frankly. Like, it doesn't. The ending is, Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz are going to go to San Francisco together. Fuck you, movie. That's my response. Like, it's unbelievable. It's unearned. And the way the movie goes about doing it is, I hid my piggy bank underground for years, and I've been putting pennies in it. Like, what is this? Like a fucking bar? Is this Barney? Like, you have a jar with all your money in it, and it's under a floorboard? Like, it leans on things that, again, just seem very lazy and tried and true, one might say. But at this point in 2002, you cannot go to this kind of well in a film like this and expect me to take it seriously. When Cameron Diaz pulls out a jar full of money and goes, "This is the money I've been saving since I was a child." Like, what the fuck? Like,
when I saw this in the theater, and they said at the end they're going to San Francisco, this guy a couple rows over, I could hear him say, "'Cause she's his beard."
I got to say something that'll probably make Will happy. Upon rewatch, this honestly felt a lot more like a Tarantino movie to me than a Scorsese movie. And that explains a lot more when you think about it like that. I mean, there's odd, like, random needle drops in this, not of like popular songs at the time necessarily, but the music is overpowering in a couple of the scenes. The casting feels like it was done in a way just to get people to watch the movie, not even necessarily to serve the plot or anything like that. And then it almost feels like, this, I want to rewrite history through the way that I tell the story. So the 5 points becoming the 5 boroughs, I'm going to make a big deal out of that.
Wish fulfillment, baby.
Yep.
I mean, again, like for someone like Scorsese, I understand why he wants to tell this story, because for me, Martin Scorsese is a director who is, I mean, you've already alluded to it, Will, like he is intrinsically linked with the city of New York. And so, like, if anybody's going to make a movie called Gangs of New York about a certain time and place in the city of New York, who better to do it than Martin Scorsese, like the preeminent, like, East Coast New York director who's been able to capture, like, so many facets of the city of New York in his career. And this is the one facet of New York that I personally am the most interested in. And the fact that it's just kind of a fucking romance at the end of the day it's such a disappointment for me as a film goer, because my preconceived notion of the movie was that while Leonardo DiCaprio was in it, he did not play the main character role. And when I realized that's what was happening, I was very disappointed, because again, then I realized what the kind of what's really going on here, which is we're just waiting for Daniel Day-Lewis to show up. Every scene that he's not in, for the most part, other than when maybe someone like Jim Broadbent is on screen or John C. Reilly, who is in this movie for reasons. He gets murdered. That's why he's in this movie. He gets murdered by Leonardo DiCaprio in a very on-the-nose scene with a lot of religious imagery. Let's just put it that way.
He shakes and he bakes.
But for the most part, I was just really... Again, maybe it's me and I'm just not a DiCaprio guy, but I was really disappointed when this movie was just a Leonardo DiCaprio movie with Daniel Day-Lewis showing up every now and then.
I'll say something that Ryan is about to find surprising. So I told you I saw this movie in the theater when it came out while I was kind of trapped in a missionary camp. I saw
going to say cult, by the way.
I saw another movie that same week, Catch Me If You Can. And I thought DiCaprio was pretty good in that. And I hate Steven Spielberg movies more than probably any other director.
I love Catch Me If You Can.
That's why I said you were going to be surprised.
I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised. I think that is a much better movie than that.
Well, yeah. This is one of the few movies I've seen where I genuinely don't understand how someone could find this to be like an amazing film, like a moving American epic. Like, really? This movie reminds me of The Revenant. It's a really well-made movie. Okay, which is fine. There are plenty of well-made movies. Well-made does not translate into entertaining. Well-made does not translate into a whole host of other things, but something can be technically impressive. Yeah.
Well, Revenant definitely has one thing going for it that Gangs of New York doesn't, which is The Revenant has no U2 song.
Well, when you think of Irish bands, there's only one Irish band.
Oh my God.
I wish that they had ended this film with 500 Miles by the Proclaimers. It would have worked a lot better.
While they're going to San Francisco.
When I wake up, it's just the two of them walking.
That's great. Well, let's talk about Daniel Day-Lewis, because I'm trying to decide what I think of this performance. Right? Everybody's like, Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest actor, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What is his performance in this film, really, right? He's got the big Jack Nicholson as the Joker smile that he does. He's got his gigantic mustache and his hat and his ridiculous Where's Waldo pantaloons.
Okay, hold on a second. He looks like
His head is so tall.
He looks like evil Willy Wonka. This is literally just what Johnny Depp was like. Just give me that outfit. I'm going to do that, but as Willy Wonka instead, because they're spitting images of one another.
Now, granted, there's some amount of period accuracy. I grant, but looking at the performance, and all credit to his flat accent and liberal use of tapping his glass eye. I think really the performance is very good. I do see a lot of emotion in him, especially when he talks to DiCaprio about his own childlessness, his lack of an heir. But in many of the other scenes, I'm like, oh, you got the props are doing most of the work. He veers between tragic villain and cartoon character for me.
I totally agree. Ryan, I was going to ask, do you think he's wearing such a large top hat because there's a mouse underneath controlling him?
It is a really compelling performance, though, right? Like, you can't take your eyes off him.
But is that because he's so much better than everybody else in the movie just on a baseline?
He's magnetic. Well, no, I mean,
you know what I mean, though? Like, let me put it this way. I think for me, it's very clear who Jay Cox and the rest of the screenwriters had a fun time writing.
Yeah. I mean, every scene that he's in with Jim Broadbent as Boss Tweed, and they're talking about the future of the city, those scenes are absolutely electric.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to watch, like, if this had been like Lincoln, where it's just people in a room talking for 3 hours.
Yeah.
If it was those two talking, that would be great. And, having now seen about half of Boardwalk Empire, I missed it when it first run, and I'm kind of catching up on it now.
You're still stuck in Park Place?
Going back and watching Boardwalk Empire, and kind of comparing it to Gangs of New York in terms of kind of the historical trajectory angle. Even though obviously Boardwalk Empire is a sprawling, like 4 or 5 season television show, and Gangs of New York is just like a long, but just one movie. I find myself kind of wanting something like that could showcase the gangs developing over time.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that's the saddest part for me about this movie is the promise of what the movie should have been is never made good, which is exactly what you just said. It's like the story of the film should have been focusing on the gangs, and you could have had each of the gangs have a magnetic leader like Daniel Day-Lewis. So you have 2 or 3 different actors, each being given their own opportunity to do their own thing, and then seeing them interact with one another, and then a Boss Tweed type character or other real life people, as opposed to this, which it kind of puts it's almost like it puts the historical nature of the setting in the background, and it's just that it doesn't matter. The story between Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz could have been told at any time, at any place, with guns, with swords, with knives, with clubs and rocks. It could have been told at any juncture in time, because there's nothing about it that inherently says this is set during a time and a place in the United States in the 1800s. It doesn't. There's not, other than Daniel Day-Lewis's character and Jim Broadbent. But other than that, their story could take place literally anytime, any place.
Well, to your point, take away all the historical context and only keep the characters that are directly connected by the Cameron Diaz character, and tell me what the difference is between this movie and There's Something About Mary.
I mean, it is that kind of lackadaisical when it comes to the writing of the romantic aspect of the movie. It's just a bunch of guys irritated that this one chick is asserting her sexual freedom. Right. I mean, I don't know how else to interpret it. It's a bunch of guys really mad that Cameron Diaz likes to have sex. I don't know what else they were doing at the time to I don't know, distract themselves from living in the time and the place that they did, but fucking was one of those things, I've got to imagine.
I mean, I don't know. They hadn't really discovered soap and deodorant yet. I'm not sure I would have wanted to be a part of it.
I like the idea that it takes a long, STDs, then you just got them. It didn't matter. There was no cure.
You are them.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at somebody the wrong way and you get something. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Henry Thomas definitely had something in this.
He's not in enough stuff, huh, Henry Thomas? Other than Mike Flanagan's stuff now?
I was going to say Mike Flanagan. Makes
Mike Flanagan was just like, hey, what are you up to? Not doing much, huh? All right, let me just cast you in like everything I'm going to work on. Does that mean he's going to be in The Exorcist?
He's been pretty great in everything.
Oh, no, I'm not dragging him by any stretch of the imagination. I actually think he's better in this movie than I think the Dodson already alluded to it, but I'm pretty sure he's better than Leonardo DiCaprio is in this entire movie.
Well, and Henry Thomas is in this quite a bit, but he's just relegated to the background. I think it would have been much more interesting if he was Leo. But I mean, one of the reasons I've always, felt a more nostalgic affinity for this is because I work in immigration, and this is like one of the more prominent immigration stories over the last 25 years. It could have been told so much better, though.
What else would you put in there? Like Men in Black? Ted?
The Proposal.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to know something funny? I kind of like The Proposal.
It's good. Yeah, we already talked about that.
Ryan went to bat for it on Film Foundations.
Show did.
The Ryan Reynolds experience. I do wish that there were more things set at this time, but that it's the only one is probably the biggest shame. Because like you said, Will, like Gangs of New York is really just a condensed version of what Boardwalk Empire ends up doing, which is really being given a long rope to play with, to tell a story. Because in a lot of ways, Boardwalk Empire, like, I mean, it came after The Sopranos, but I think it deserves to be in the conversation as good a show as The Sopranos. I mean, obviously it's a Terrence Winter show who worked on The Sopranos, so the bones were there from The Sopranos. But I mean, in terms of the setting, there's no other show set at a time and a place like that, just like there's no movie set at this time and place either. So,
well, you know, the book was written in 1927.
Right.
There hasn't really been historical study to update it yet, which I was surprised by. I might be wrong. Maybe I got a blind spot, but I was looking around for a more recent book on similar subjects and I couldn't find.
Which is kind of crazy, right? Because it feels like it hasn't been mined fully. At least to me, it doesn't feel like it's been mined fully.
It's definitely ripe for other stuff that you could make. I mean, even again, kind of as Will was saying, if we had taken this setting and made a mini series at least and done like a full episode on each of the 5 gangs and discussed those in full and how they got to where they are, and then had like a big culmination episode, that'd be pretty great. I'd love to spend more time in here. And that's why I said I didn't hate it, but primarily what I liked was mostly like the setting and the fringe and the way that the sets were designed. Everything is just, it's a fun world to live in. That's pretty much it.
So in October of 2022, Variety announced that there would be a Gangs of New York TV show in the works. So there you go. That's 2 years ago, though, so who the fuck knows, right? I mean, that's it's essentially a lifetime in the industry, so...
There is a book from 2001 called 5 Points, the 19th century New York City neighborhood that invented tap dance, stole elections, and became the world's most notorious slum. But it doesn't, and it's not really a history book. It's more about the tap dancing.
Wouldn't that have been better instead of William the Butcher? He's just William the Tap Dancer. Just tap dances around.
That'd be a Coppola movie, probably.
That was the other thing that made Daniel Day-Lewis feel more like a cartoon character, is that name, Bill the Butcher Cutting.
Right.
But in this case, that's the real guy.
Right.
Yeah. What? You know, Scorsese took liberties with the history everywhere else. I don't think Amsterdam was real.
Well, if he was, I hope he wasn't written so poorly in real life. Let's just put it that way.
That was one of my favorite moments of comedy in the movie. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but they asked DiCaprio his name, and he clearly hadn't thought of a pseudonym yet. So he's just like, Amsterdam. Like he couldn't come up with Johnny Utah.
I am also named Bill the Butcher. Isn't that weird?
Hannibal Lecter.
Trust me, the kids are going to love it. Well, and then I think the thing that bothers me probably the most about the movie is, again, we have, like we've already alluded to, we get the end of the movie where we have the 2 main characters going at it, trying to fight one another, while there's also soldiers shooting at people. So it's like, what are the stakes of this at this point? Like, what are we supposed to take away from this? Other than the fact that you're telling me the soldiers didn't just shoot everybody? Just didn't kill everybody? They're going to let these 2 guys fight in the middle of the street? Like, for real? Like, it's, I don't know. It's just, the movie ends up feeling really contrived when so much of the movie didn't feel contrived at all. Like, so much of it is just, yes, I understand that it is a romantic story, but it's not like they're doing a lot to be contrived. But by the end of the movie, it's like, okay, fine. We really have to have all these, like, I don't know. I get really frustrated when movies just kind of fizzle out at the end, and this movie fizzled out really, really hard.
Yeah. To me, a much more interesting character arc, and somebody whose death actually made sense the way it happened was the Brendan Gleeson character, Monk McGinn, right? Who is much more pragmatic than Priest, right? The DiCaprio's dead father. Much more mercenary and transactional, kind of is understanding the game, but then gets like caught up in inexplicably, in some ways, caught up in the promise of DiCaprio's character, and then allows himself to become vulnerable as an elected official, right? As the sheriff. So his character throughout has this really interesting and important counterpunctual arc to DiCaprio's character, to the ethos of the Priest character, and to Butcher. But then suddenly he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to like stop being, careful and pragmatic, and I'm just going to put myself with a, right in the spot where a target will be on my face. And so Butcher comes to kill him. And then we're supposed to believe that DiCaprio can kill the guy that Brendan Gleeson could not. So I think that's the moment where the movie really lost me, because Gleason's character, Monk McGinn, was probably my third, after Tweed and Butcher, the third character that I was really interested in following.
Well, I think it also helps when, the actor is Brendan Gleeson, who, he's amazing in everything, obviously. And you kind of already alluded to it, Will, like so much of this movie really benefits from the character actors who are in it, but aren't doing much other than having to interact with Leonardo DiCaprio and everybody else. Like, you kind of just wish Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't the main character of the movie.
Of any movie, honestly.
You're going to love Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, man. That is like, Wolf of Wall Street is the most insufferable fucking movie for me. Like, I cannot. I've seen it once, and I was like, if I have to watch this movie again, I would. No thanks. Just don't. Just don't.
Well, I got to. I'm committed. I'm going to see every Scorsese movie. And I didn't mention, but Ryan knows. So I'm doing this every Scorsese movie, and parallel to it, I'm watching every Francis Ford Coppola movie, including like Jack and stuff, and every Woody Allen movie, because the three of them made New York Stories together, that omnibus. And so I'm watching all three filmmakers in order all the way through, and Paul Schrader. So that's why it's taken me so long. I'm moving very slowly because I'm doing it in all chronologically.
Nice.
Yeah, it's already gotten... Well, when I saw Finian's Rainbow, I was like, I'm quitting. Have you seen that? Is Coppola's musical with Fred Astaire? Yeah.
I have not.
Well, it exists. You can see it if you want to.
That's kind of how I feel about this movie. Like, this movie exists. You can watch it if you want to. I don't know if I will ever revisit this movie. Like, it's frankly a shame, because so much of what I do like about this movie is a Daniel Day-Lewis performance that verges on comedic and verges on being from another movie completely. And a much more, can you imagine if everybody was at 11 like Daniel Day-Lewis was in this movie? Obviously that wouldn't really work, but it might if the movie were different altogether. Like, if everybody were this elevated and over the top, it would totally work.
He's always funny. You ever see My Left Foot?
I have not. The funniest movie about a man who can only use his left foot to communicate? It's a real knee slapper, that one.
Well, you can't, but...
Can't do anything other than move his foot.
It's a real toe wiggler.
That's for me. The movie at least lived up to the expectation I had about Daniel Day-Lewis being really good. But so what when the movie that surrounds it is 3 hours long? And narratively disjointed, too. Because like you already alluded to, Ryan, there's like an hour left once the jig is up. And they don't do anything with that hour. Like, it's just spinning its wheels until they're fighting each other in the streets. And
even then, that takes a while, too. Like, that scene goes on way longer than it needed to.
Yeah, and I don't understand what Scorsese's trying to get out of prolonging the runtime of the film. Because, if you go and read about what happened to the movie after the fact, like when it was being edited, like there was like a 3.5-hour version of this movie that Scorsese wanted to release it, and Harvey Weinstein cut it down, which, that was my other my other favorite thing about watching this movie was having to see the Miramax title right at the beginning, because that nothing makes me want to throw up in my lap more than having to see Miramax in front of fucking anything, contemporary or from 2002.
I was looking to see if Daniel Day-Lewis had been in any comedies, and the closest is probably A Room with a View, which actually is pretty funny, in my opinion, book and film. But he was also in a TV film in '81, Thank You, P.G. Wodehouse. And I love P.G. Wodehouse. Love him. He plays Smith in Thank You, P.G. Wodehouse. I wonder if that's available to see. I would love to see Daniel Day-Lewis in
he was also in a film called Stars and Bars, which is an American comedy film.
How old was he?
From '88. Has Harry Dean Stanton in it, Maury Chaykin, Joan Cusack, Spalding Gray. Huh. Weird. Yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is just kind of, I don't know, he's on a pedestal as an actor, right? I mean, that's kind of where he is, I feel like, professionally for so many people. I mean, and I think that's by design and by reality. I mean, he's a very private person on top of everything else. So I don't know. There's an aura of mysticism around Daniel Day-Lewis that a lot of other actors do not and will not ever have. And I think that he has definitely benefited from that in his career. But I mean, I don't think that it's unfair to say he's genuinely, I think, one of the greatest actors ever. But again, in terms of people working now that are in his class, I'm not sure that there is anybody working right now that's in the same class of actor that he is, at least broadly. So no, I mean, he's one of the few actors that made method acting actually work. Like, he's the one that everybody else has tried to follow in terms of method acting, in terms of what Daniel Day-Lewis does with method acting, with My Left Foot and stuff like that. Like, that comes from Daniel Day-Lewis and the things that he did, where we have people like Jared Leto sending condoms to his co-stars on the Suicide Squad, or Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad. Two different movies. Well, I mean, the idea of what the method acting, I guess, attempts that Jared Leto is doing compared to Daniel Day-Lewis.
So that was
not blaming Daniel Day-Lewis, but when one person does it well, you got a bunch of people following him trying to do the same thing poorly. Yeah. His really foul fucking latex infused.
Oh, Jared Leto's just trying to get people to drink his milkshake.
I sure do. Yeah, wouldn't it have been better if Jared Leto had been the DiCaprio role in this movie? Then it would have been really good.
We live in a society.
Hey, speaking of 2002, I mean, Jared Leto was acting in 2002, right? What was he up to?
He would have.
Yeah. God. Jared Leto.
He could have been all aloof, and Cameron Diaz would have been awkward around him.
Man, what a great movie this would have been too. And you know what the funny thing is? There's like a
Amsterdam
less
tattooed
than
on his forehead.
0% chance that Cameron Diaz and Jared Leto were talking about her being in this movie, because they were dating at the time. So yeah, in 2002, Jared Leto was in Highway, Panic Room, and oh yeah, he was also in Phone Booth. So it all comes back to Phone Booth. So what I'm saying is we need to do an episode on Phone Booth.
I want to take a minute to acknowledge Lawrence Gilliard Jr., who played Jimmy Spoils in Gangs of New York. The only black actor in the movie, and someone whose function in the whole film is to be abused by everyone racially. Truly a thankless role. He's in several scenes.
He's in Waterboy.
He's got a small but significant role, but he basically exists to have racial slurs hurled at him.
Be harassed.
Yeah, and Lawrence Gilliard Jr. is a good actor.
I like that. I like that scene when DiCaprio came back to get the knife, and he and the other gentleman they corner him, and where'd you get that? And they start fighting, and DiCaprio takes them both out, and he said, I didn't want to start a fight. The other guy says, why not? You did pretty good.
Yeah. But that's where the movie got me. I was like just looking around trying to find somebody to hold my attention, because I do dislike DiCaprio as an actor. Nobody can help how they look, and he's born a pretty boy.
Who also happens to date younger women.
Yeah, he's so
Yeah, man, I love ham
like I
on
said,
rye.
He just gives off that college guy with
You guys like
conspicuously
Burroughs?
placed
He did a lot of
unread
cut-ups.
books.
You guys into that?
you know.
Man, I could totally see that too. And you know what? Actually,
Yeah,
for
you
me,
know,
the thing about
just been really
DiCaprio,
getting into Bukowski.
probably at least for me,
You know,
put a pin in Leonardo DiCaprio.
It's incredible
That
what he did with language.
the discourse around him being nominated a bunch of times and never winning an Oscar, and he deserves it, and when is he ever going to win one? Like, shut the fuck up. Amy Adams still hasn't won an Academy Award. She's been nominated like 13 times. You fucking degenerates. But hey, we get it. She's not fucking Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, what person is going... I don't understand why someone is going to complain about someone else not winning an award when they don't even get to make the decision. Like, it sucks that Amy Adams hasn't gotten to win an Academy Award, but there's literally nothing I can do about it. So there you go. I'm not going to go on the internet and scream about Leonardo DiCaprio not winning a fake award that actually means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like, she is, frankly. She could have. And then she, too, would have been saddled with a terrible Irish accent.
This was the agenda of the whole show. You just wanted to get to the part where, you know what? Amy Adams.
Cyberdyne, something.
Goddamn award.
You could have played the Cameron Diaz part.
Janine Cyberdyne. This is a Terminator film as well.
Just a terrible role. I was like, I can't even remember the name of the character. That's how forgettable. What was her name? Jenny
Why that? Yeah, you know what?
Everdeen.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, we just need more movies like this in the world. You know, more movies with Cameron Diaz. And let's just get Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron
Jenny
Diaz and
Everdeen.
Martin
She was a
Scorsese to do one more movie together. Can't be any worse than this. Oh, well, I've only seen the first one. And this movie doesn't have Jennifer Lawrence in it, so at least it's got that going for it. I'm not a fan of Jennifer Lawrence. That has been well documented and well known. Ryan and I have had many conversations about
I liked this better than Hunger
She's
Games.
just another actress I don't resonate with.
Why- we're hating on. I can't think of anything I've seen her in. I saw her in that Last House on the End of the Street movie. What was that called?
The Last House at the End of the Street.
No, is that really what it was called?
Yeah.
I
Or The House at the End of the Street, I think.
liked that.
It's not a good movie.
No, there was a good scene where she was like on some stairs in a basement. I remember that.
Silver Linings Playbook?
I saw that. What was that comedy where she's like hired to date Matthew Broderick's kid? You know, it just came out.
Yeah, I do. I keep
Natalie
wanting to-
Portman.
No, I keep wanting to say No Strings Attached, but that's not it.
No, that's
We have gone.
Padma. What's her name? Luke Skywalker's mom. What's her name in the movie? Padma. Right?
Just the way you described it is pretty great, though.
No Hard Feelings is the name of the movie we're
Like
thinking.
penises.
Right. Yeah, because it was a pun on hard.
Padme.
Because she was supposed to have sex with
You a
him.
Star Wars guy, Will?
That's the premise of the movie.
I think what we're
know,
finding
but
out
we
on
don't
this
need to
episode is
spell
Will
that.
doesn't like much of anything.
It's a
What
pun
was-
on hard.
But what was Natalie?
You did
Portman's
say that
name in
you
the Star
didn't
Wars
like
movie?
Steven
Padme.
Spielberg at all, which is
Padme.
controversial opinions.
No,
with
I
Will
hate him.
Dodson. Well, one of those movies
That's
is
not
not
true.
great. I'll let
I
you
just said I
decide
like
which one
Last
it
House on the
is.
End of the Street.
And it's not a good movie.
It's not Jaws, that's for sure.
I don't. I like Jaw.
Yeah,
I like
right.
Duel and I like Jaw.
I am not a fan. Yeah. Man, I'm just gonna
was
leave that
waiting
one.
for
I'm not
Will
even
to
gonna
respond
fix
and go,
that in post,
"What's wrong
Ryan,
with
just for you.
Duel's pretty good.
You know, a movie a day keeps the doctor
okay.
away. That's what I've been told.
Everybody's movie. Every movie is somebody's favorite movie.
I didn't mean to make that joke, but the fact that you took it randomly, Ryan,
Will.
is funny.
It's not even the name of the company.
Anything else we want to talk about with Gangbangs of New York?
I want to point out that
Yet he keeps showing up.
want to point out.
I wish it was,
water
yeah.
This whole time. I'm sure that was the name of the porn parody that came out. We'll have to look that up as well. So yeah, he follows
Bringing
this
out the
up
dead
with,
heads for sure.
Aviator and Departed. In the decades that have passed, I think both Kundun and Bringing Out the Dead have gained some critical status reevaluation. And at the time that we're recording this, Paramount just announced they were doing a 4K release of Bringing Out the Dead, so that'll be pretty interesting. Kundun's been released in a couple different editions, and this is really a pivot away from, those two movies were kind of the last two films that really delved into Scorsese's most, I think, electric spiritual and psychological obsessions. I mean, I know Silence is also, got a spiritual milieu. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't speak to it. But it does seem to me that Gangs of New York was this turning point where he became a much more, what's the word?
I don't know about that. I think you're actually. I think you're pretty. You're pretty already. You're already there.
He became safer.
Yeah.
I think that's my impression anyway. And hopefully there'll be some of his later movies that I haven't seen yet that'll prove me wrong. But yeah, this.
What about you, Ryan?
This. Okay. Well, listeners, Gangs of New York feels like that turning. That's the turning point where we stop taking risks. So it's all Nick Cage's fault.
Again, I don't hate the entirety of this movie. I think it is certainly overrated. There is a lot to appreciate going on in a lot of the shots in this movie, but it's a bloated mess, that's for sure. There is a lot of wasted script here. I had this vague memory of the fairly early alley scene with Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz, where he followed her to get back his coin or token or whatever he called it. And I remember metal. That's correct. I seem to remember that appearing on like best scenes of sexual tension lists online or something. And watching this now afterwards, all I can think is like, did they watch the rest of the movie? I don't understand what they did to advance his relationship with her in such a unnecessarily negative way. Nope.
It's because they don't respect her character in the movie at all, because she's barely treated like a character. Yeah, I wasn't excited per se to watch this movie. I was more just ready to watch it and kind of see how it panned out. And yeah, it's fine. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I'm sure that if you're a Daniel Day-Lewis completionist, you've probably already seen it, because obviously he's kind of comes away as the one from this movie who I think stands out, but not a top Scorsese movie for me, not one that I'm probably ever going to revisit. And I think to your point, Will, this is an inflection point in Scorsese's career where things change and not necessarily for the better. Yeah, this movie is
Peter Travers is.
I'm disappointed, but ultimately not surprised. So on that note, we'll take a break, play some ads, and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
From Weirding Way Media, Cambridge and Washawn is a podcast about two guys' obsessions, passions, and hobbies. Those two guys are
Mark Bigley, host of Wake Up Heavy, Recollections of Horror,
and Ronald Zerigian, host of the Skelevator YouTube channel.
Each month we talk about the toys, comics, movies, books, TV shows, and other cultural phenomena that captured our imaginations and helped shape who we are today.
From Masters of the Universe to Saturday Night Live, Star Wars to Harry Houdini, The Muppets to The Elephant Man, Ronnie and Mark dive deep into the recesses of their minds to pull out treasured memories of things lost but never forgotten.
Join us on the first Tuesday of each month over at weirdingwaymedia.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join me, Jamie Benning, on the Filmumentaries podcast, particularly if you enjoy stories like designer Nilo Rodis Jamiro convincing George Lucas to push him around to help gain the support of his crew on the ailing Howard the Duck.
Blam! The door opens, it's George. Everybody gasps. George makes a beeline to me. I'm literally back against the wall.
Or hear puppeteer Tim Rose's emotional story behind that iconic Admiral Akbar shot in Return of the Jedi.
I believe that war is something to be proud of, but not to celebrate.
or how Star Wars editor Paul Hirsch tackled cutting so many successful films.
The thing that I learned from working with De Palma is that tension depends on a clock. You need to have the sense that time is running out.
Maybe Oscar-winning sound designer Mark Mangini's insightful chat about his work on Blade Runner 2049.
Not a single sound from the original Blade Runner in the new film. A great deal of inspiration.
That's the Filmumentaries podcast with me, Jamie Benning.
Hello, Twisted Humans. Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting? Then this is the podcast for you. In 1952, there was a record high of UFOs reported. 1,500 sightings. There has been evidence of human sacrifice, devil worship, and it is haunted by more spirits than can be counted. A family of 2 adults and 2 kids reportedly saw a giant flying thing with glowing red eyes. And meanwhile, the family's nanny that helped Veronica to care for her and Lucian's children was found bludgeoned to death in the basement of their family home. I'm Alicia. And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
It started last weekend at the L. Howard game. Girl, I saw your beaver flash. I'll never be the same. Oh no.
You gave me a soul kiss. Boy, it sure was grand. You gave me a dry hump behind the hot dog stand. Oh yeah.
I used to have pimples, but I made them disappear.
He faced life with face off. It made his skin so clear.
A pimple is simple if you treat your pimples right.
My man uses face off. He's really out of sight, and so are his pimples.
Episode of the Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about Putney Swope, which is not a movie directed by Martin Scorsese. So there you go. Never seen it. So until then, where can people find you, Dr. Dodson?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at WDodson52, X at WDodson52, and on the first Thursday of every month, I am a guest on Reconnected with Ryan.
Speaking of Ryan, what about you, Ryan?
Well, I happen to be the one that's a little more formally media trained, I guess, from this duo. So I will say that Will and I run a company called Someone's Favorite Productions together. And we work on bonus features on Blu-ray and 4K home video releases. We help consult with a bunch of home video boutique labels. We are working on things like social media management, theatrical bookings, transcriptions, all kinds of things behind the scenes. And Will is absolutely my better half for a lot of these things. So publicly, I will say I thank Will beyond belief. But to highlight some of the things that we've been on this year, I really want to highlight a couple specific titles. If you're into like Japanese erotic thrillers, check out Door 2. We've got some great features on that release that came out through TerrorVision earlier this year. While you're on that site, check out Dreamstalker. We've got a visual essay that an incredible friend of ours, Erica Schultz, wrote with her podcast partner, who happens to be on our podcast network as well. There's a visual essay on there called All Jocks Are Bastards. And it's amazing. And Dreamstalker is a really fun release, also through TerrorVision. And while you are looking at that, head on over to Amazon or Hamilton Books or anywhere else and pick up the Film Masters release of The Swiss Conspiracy. We've got a longer form short documentary on there that is about Jack Arnold, and really proud of it. And I think people would appreciate it. And check it out.
Oh, Nail Gun Massacre.
Yeah, that gets a lot of publicity. I'm trying to shout out some of the smaller titles. Okay. But yeah, I'm sure most people have heard of Nail Gun Massacre. We are all over that disc. We did an audio commentary for that together. I did all the brand new interviews for that. That disc is stacked beyond belief, and it's a crazy 4K release of something that it never should have looked this good, and it's fantastic. Check out Nail Gun Massacre from TerrorVision.
As for me, you can find me at weirdingwaymedia.com, where this show and all the other shows that I work on can be found, along with a whole bunch of other shows that I have nothing to do with other than them being on the network. So like, rate, and review this show on iTunes, please, regardless of where you get it. That helps us find our audience. If you're interested in helping us out financially, patreon.com/culturecast is where you can go to kick a couple dollars our way, $10 or more. You get access to Rankin' on Bond, which once a month we talk about James Bond. So there you go. Ryan, Will, thank you so much for joining me. This has been fun.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'm sorry for Will's behavior.
I mean...
I thought it went really well.
Oh, Lord. And as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.